if you're going to take Selah's words to heart, Lord, I trust you, if you're going to decide fear is not going to be the driving force or the cloud on your horizon any longer, if you're going to decide, I am going to trust God, I'm going to take steps of trusting God, I want to be like that tree planted by the stream. I don't want to be the bush trying to grow in the desert. If that's what you want to do, let me tell you what that looks like in action. When we trust God, what does that look like? What actions follow a heart of trusting God? As I think about those actions, I realize that one action is we make a choice to trust God. We choose to do that. We make a choice and we say, I am going to trust God even when there's fear, even when I am unsure, even when I don't know the way, even if I don't know that I can manage. I choose. I decide. I will trust God. We make a choice. We make choices all the time, don't we? As you're driving down Broadway in Fargo and the light turns yellow, you make a choice. Will you stop or will you run through a red light? We make choices every day. You have the power to make the choice to trust God. Will you make that choice? Another thing that trusting God looks like, one of the actions that we take when we trust God is we humble ourselves. We look at our tendency to want to manage things our own way, to want to depend on ourselves, to not want to depend on someone outside of ourselves. After all, people have let me down. Maybe my own parents weren't very dependable. And we need to decide, if I make the choice to trust God, then I need to humble myself. One of the principles in the Bible that's carried through all of its pages is that God opposes the proud. People who want to stand up and shake their fist in God's face will not see His grace. God opposes the proud, but, the verse says, but God gives grace to the humble. Humble yourself, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that He may lift you up. Will we humble ourselves? Will we stop trying to take the throne of our life? And will we say, God, I will not try to do this without you. I need you. I need you. Actions of trust. We make the choice to trust. We humble ourselves. Another thing I notice about trust is that it teaches us dependence. I often remind people that as parents, we want our children to grow up and become independent. In fact, if our children are too dependent on us, we realize that maybe we need to change some of our parenting decisions or handle life a little differently. Our kids need to learn some independence. That might mean that we give them choices to make on their own when they can handle the choices. We want them to be independent, one day living and managing life on their own. But as one who trusts in the Lord, that means I grow in my dependence on God. I grow more and more dependent on Him. Just this week, our church council got together over Zoom. And before our meeting, I had things I hoped that we would do. But I came before the Lord and I said, Lord, you're in charge of our church. You are the head of our church. We are members of your body. Please lead us. And in that sense of dependence, our church council made decisions that surprised me, things I didn't expect. And that's okay. Because being a pastor of the church means that I trust the Lord. And trusting the Lord means I grow more and more dependent upon Him. As I think about what it looks like to trust God, what happens to us when we're trusting God, another thing I notice is that we ask, we appeal. A few weeks ago in this time, I read those verses from Jesus. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open. Jesus is saying, will you trust your Heavenly Father? He's a Father who loves you. He's going to give you good things. And so you are invited to ask and seek and knock. So trusting God leads us to appeal to Him. That's part of that dependence. It's part of that humility. It's part of that choice. And it all pictures what it means to trust God. Where are you in life right now? In this situation, are you jobless? Are you worried about the future? Do you find yourself wondering what's going to happen in the weeks ahead? Do you find yourself struggling to rest at night? Do you worry for your children? Do you feel like you need to fix something but you have no power to be able to do that? Then let me invite you to trust in the Lord. To see that brokenness, to realize that helplessness, to be honest about what we cannot do, and to make the choice to believe. To make the choice that I will now trust God. And in that trusting God, I will humble myself and I'll recognize how dependent I am on Him. And I will ask Him. I will appeal to Him because that's what it means to trust the Lord. I don't know where our cities are going. I don't know what the future holds this summer. I was talking with one of the folks at our church. She's a school teacher, and she was saying that some of the teachers are concerned that next fall may be another time where this distance education thing will be holding. And as a teacher, she's concerned. She's not sure that she can manage that well. It's a tough situation. There are many difficult situations all around us. Your business might be at risk. Your business might not make it. But you can trust the Lord. And in trusting God, the promise of Jeremiah is that He somehow will provide. He will take care of us. We will have what we need. And it will be okay. Moms, we don't know what the future holds for our kids. But if we will trust God, it will be okay. My own mom, in the years just following World War II, she was a young adult in her late teens, and she met the man who she would marry, my dad. He was a soldier that had gotten seriously injured in training for World War II, had spent months and months in the hospital, had come out of the hospital, got his teaching degree and was beginning to be a teacher. And my mom and my dad met and they got married, and not long after their marriage, I was born. And as my mom described her place in that time and the difficulties she faced, being a long way from her family, in situations that she felt helpless, my mom described it as all she knew to do was to ask God to help. She didn't have answers. She didn't know how to manage the challenges of life, to be this new mother, to be this new wife, to to handle a husband with lots of problems, as you might expect. Today we would call them post-traumatic issues. All she knew to do was pray. All she could do was trust God. And she did. And week after week, month after month, year after year, God took care of my mom and me and my brother and my dad. And now, as I talk to my mom often weekly, we often remember together how God has provided for us and how God took care of us when we didn't even know ourselves what would happen. God promises if we will trust Him, we'll be like a tree planted by streams, and we won't have to be afraid of a drought, and we will bear fruit, and we will see times of prosperity. It will be okay. Here's my promise to you, and with this I close. If you and I, and together we will trust God, we will make it through this, and it will be okay. But if we decide that we don't need Him, and we can manage ourselves without Him, and we decide not to look to Him in humility and maybe even brokenness and dependence, then we have only a desert to look forward to. I don't know about you. I choose to trust the Lord. Will you join me in that trust?